Yeah, thank you much. Madam Secretary, if we could have a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. President. Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Here.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Here.
Division 5, Robert Paris.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Here.
Division 1, Drew Mercy. Director Mercy will be a couple minutes late. Division 3, Frank Donato. Division 4, George Lane.
Here.
General Manager Knutson.
Here.
General Counsel Kim.
Here.
And Holly Hughes present.
This is Frank. I'm here.
Thank you, Director Donato.
The next order is voluntary public roll call. We're always happy to hear from those who are listening in. We'd like to hear who's listening in and any comments you may have. Now's the time to do so.
John, you could set.
John, welcome.
Thank you.
White Fence 3, Jack Cephas.
Jack, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, George.
Dino from the Water District.
Welcome. Thank you.
Hi, George. This is John Joyce from the Roseman News.
Hey, John. Good to hear from you. Okay, moving on, item number 5, public comments, and bring it over to the public. So if anybody would like to address the board now on any matter, it's not on the agenda. Now there's an opportunity to do so. Hearing nothing at this time, move to item number 6, adoption of agenda. We have a board order for that, the agenda for February 13th. Welcome, Drew.
There you go.
So motion would be in order.
Mr. President, I'll move on 6A1.
Motion by Director Miller. Second by Director Paris. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary, if we could have a roll call.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Here.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Drew Mercy.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. That brings us to item number 7, consent calendar. We have 2 items. We have approved the minutes of January 23rd and adopt resolution regarding exchange of property tax revenue with the county sanitation district. And I know that with this county sanitation district, we always approve that, but if we don't, we'll do it anyway. So we have no choice. So if there's no discussion on that, the motion would be in order. It'll be a long meeting.
Mr. President, I'll move approval.
Okay, Director Mercy, Director Van Dam is second. Okay, if there's nothing further, Madam Secretary, get a roll call.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Drew Mercy.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. That'll bring us down to item number 8, the Finance Committee. And Director Donato is chairman of that committee.
Yes.
Donato can get a...
Yes. So we have the PFM investment performance reports and presentation for the 4th quarter ending 12/31/23 by Richard.
Good evening, Mr. President and directors.
Yeah, welcome.
Oh, sorry.
Welcome.
Thank you. If we go into the presentation, I'll skip the first slide, which is just the current market themes. This is an agenda package. It relates to a lot of the things that we'll talk about. But if I want to get onto the next page, the key thing that's been driving the investment markets is inflation. And we had an inflation report today that was somewhat negative from the market's perspective. This chart is actually the Fed's preferred measure, which is the personal consumption expenditures. And what we see is that light blue line, it shows different components of it. Overall inflation's coming down, but that light blue line is what they call supercore, which strips out some of the more volatile components of inflation, plus strips out housing. This is a lot of the wage-driven type of components. And the thing that's concerning to the Fed is those elements of inflation remain elevated. So there's going to take more time to come down. I've talked to a lot of my clients in the past week or two that are facing labor negotiations. And I can say all of them aren't expecting their wages to go down. They're expecting the wages to go up, as almost everyone is who's been facing inflation. So that will continue to keep inflation higher than maybe what the Fed wants in the near term. If we go to the next slide. From an economic view, this is the chart on the top is showing you the quarter by quarter GDP numbers and since third quarter of 22, and the far right is the fourth quarter of 23. And the table below indicates what the individual components of GDP are. The key story here is that the economy has been growing stronger than expected. When the Fed did its forecast of GDP growth in December of 2023, it was suggesting GDP would come in at 0.4% for the entire year. Currently, it looks like it's come in about 2.5%. And while fourth quarter GDP was down at 3.3% versus 4.9%, again, overall very strong growth. And if we point out in the table below, one of the key contributors is that is personal consumptions, consumers spending the money. The outlook going forward is for the economy to slow, but not to go into recession in 2024. The thing I would say is, while overall economic growth remains above, demographic trends of about 1.8%, there's still things that are worrisome. We're seeing credit card delinquencies go up. Not high by historical standards, but definitely up from where they've been recently. The housing market still faces a lot of challenges. The commercial real estate market hasn't fully adjusted to where it is now. A lot of corporations have to refinance their debt at higher levels. So I think, while basic trends are good, there are a lot of things out there that could upset the apple cart going forward. If we go to the next slide, this is showing you the Fed's forecast of where economic elements would be going forward. In the upper left is the change in real GDP. The lighter colors are showing you what their forecast was in September. The darker colors were in their December forecast. The next forecast they will do will be at their March meeting. The numbers didn't change much, except that you see GDP, what they forecast is 2.6, was much stronger than what they were expecting even in their September meeting. So again, economic growth from their factors remains strong. Unemployment rate, they were suggesting it would be 3.8 into this year, came in at 3.7%, and they're suggesting it'll go up next year. The Fed would actually like to see some increase in the unemployment rate to put some downward pressure on those wage increases that I was talking about earlier. Bottom left shows their preferred measure of PCE inflation, personal consumption expenditures. What you see is it's coming down, but it's 2026 before it gets to that Fed target of 2%. So they're saying this will take a long time. The chart on the right is the Fed funds target rate. The big discussion has been, we've reached peak rates. The Fed at their December meeting basically said, we're done raising interest rates. The question becomes how fast and when will they start cutting rates? And their dot plot was suggesting 3 rate cuts during the entire of 2024. Doesn't say when those will happen. And that's been a big debate between the Fed and the market. In fact, if we go to the next page, on the next page, what this is the market's results from Fed funds futures. So these are Fed funds futures that trade in the market that indicate what the market thinks the Fed funds rate will be at different points in time. The shaded indicates what the 6-month range is, and it's all showing you what they think the Fed funds rate will be between December of 23 and December of 25. So it's suggesting what it'll be in the forecast. In September, they were thinking, rates are going to come down fairly slowly, so the Fed funds chart just goes down slightly. That darker blue line is where they were thinking at December. So the market started thinking, Fed's not just going to cut rates 3 times during 2024. They may cut it 6 to 7 times during 2024. What came out today is with the CPI report not being as positive as the market expected, meaning inflation was stickier than they thought. They've sort of backed off on that, and they sort of think, well, maybe it'll be 3 or 4 rate cuts, and that the first one may not happen until June or July versus March where they were expecting it. If we go to the next slide, we're showing you the two-year Treasury yield during the fourth quarter of 2023. What you see is a general trend down. And the things that we're calling out is the market was looking for signals to say the Fed's moving rates lower, and we saw it go down, go down, go down. And the two-year was as high as 525 in October. It ended the quarter at 425. And in January, it actually went down as low as 414. But given some of those economic reports, we've seen interest rates come up to about 460 today. So interest rates aren't as low as what the market was sort of suggesting recently, but we're not back at that 525 level. So the expectations are over the next year, rates will be lower, but how fast and how much, we still don't know. It depends on what the economic data tells us. So on the next chart, what we wanted to show you is these are Treasury yield curves, the shaded areas where Treasury yields have been in the past 15 years. During that time frame, we were in a long period of interest rates being almost zero. So that's why that chart goes down so low. The dotted blue line was where interest rates were in September. As I mentioned, interest rates hit their peak in about October. And that you see in December, they've come down. And as I mentioned, that the two-year had gone down to 425 and is now at 460. So we've seen some upward movement, but we're not going to reach the same levels we did in October. It still suggests that there's still good opportunities to buy investments out longer and lock in yields for a longer time. But you also see how the shape of the yield curve is. It's very inverted. So short-term investments are actually yielding higher than longer-term investments. So, you know, a two-year Treasury right now is at about 460, I said. You can get a 3-month Treasury at over 5.5%. Camp is at 552. LAIF is to about 4%. So there is a cost to going out farther. It's really what your perspective is how fast interest rates will go down. If we go to the next slide, we'll shift specifically to your portfolio one more. And this is showing you the key statistics of your portfolio. In the upper left-hand corner, one thing that I want to point out, the yield at cost, the average yield on your portfolio was 374 at the end of the quarter. It's actually, if I took it today, it's about 398 because the security had matured and been reinvested. And that's another thing that I want to point in the bottom right-hand corner is that shows your maturity or duration distribution of your portfolio, that you can see the bulk of your portfolio is going to mature in the next year, which will give you an opportunity to have those funds reinvested in new investments in that time frame. So we will see the yield on the portfolio continue to go up. Upper right-hand corner, the dark blue is the federal agencies, the gray is the treasuries. Those remain the main components of the portfolio, safest, most liquid investments that we have out there. If we go to the next slide.
Wait, can you go back, please? This is Director Donato. I have a question. My question is this. Let's say you get yields at, 5%. Okay? And what's going on in society right now is that we got California, April 1st, going to $20 an hour. I just saw a congresswoman in California said she wants to go to $50 an hour. There's going to be I know for a fact there's going to be mass layoffs this coming real short. So it doesn't matter if we make 5%. I just talked to my staff in the finance meeting last week. We went up 12% year over year on our costs for our employee staff medical benefits. We went from $93,000 a month to $104,000. So what I don't understand. It doesn't matter if we make 5%. Who's going to stop the crap that's going on in the country? So we can invest, because everything you said is really a conflict, because when we go out to bid, it's going to run us 12%. We're making 5%, now we're going to pay 12% on cost of goods for piping and everything else. That's our problem. So maybe you can show us where we can make 15% legally so we can offset the 10%.
I wish I could, and if I could, I would be retired right now.
Well, let me go one step further, because I mean, I enjoy watching your presentation, and we pay for this. But the second most wealthiest man in the world just moved from Washington State to save $680 million of state income tax. Now, you know, all this stuff that's going on reflects what we're doing as an agency. In my career, I have never, in 38 years, in my 38 year, I have never seen anything like this in my career, even in a foreclosure market. This is absolutely absurd. But yet, let me ask you, I got a question for you. How are we going to counter the 80, 90 billion that the Schumer just approved? Well, they lost. Thank God Congress stopped it. We're going over to Russia and Ukraine and Israel. Who's paying for that? So what we're doing is we're borrowing money from ourselves, which means that causes inflation. Now, I did take Economics 101, 102, 108, 110, because my post degree is in real estate economics. So all I'm trying to figure out here as a director, how do we keep ahead of the game? That's all. I just want to bring that to the public, because we haven't. Just go ahead and finish your presentation. But I'm not blaming you. I'm just blaming the whole system that reflects what agency has to do. Because 5% doesn't mean anything to us. I mean, it really doesn't. I mean, it's great that we're getting it, but it's not going to help what we're going through right now. It's crazy. Thank you.
I would think those are very good points, and I would share a lot of them. You know, as far as the investments of what we can get, it's really constrained by what you're able to do. You know, that you can't invest in hedge funds or real estate or other things like that. So there are limits on that. The other thing is, when I talked about the economic conditions being generally favorable, there are, like I said, some near-term issues such as credit card delinquencies and things increasing.
Oh, they're going to crash. They're going to crash. They're going to crash. They're expecting the largest default in car loans in the history of the world in 2024. All these people bought these Teslas are going to start walking away from them, and these Hummers and all this other stuff. So, I mean, it doesn't really, it kind of affects AVAC, because what it does is our growth stops. It doesn't continue to grow. And you know, as a financial advisor, growth is so important for us to plan and make money when it comes to housing and income taxes and everything else. So, but I will say one thing I have to commend you on. It's the first time I've had a financial consultant in all my years that said it's better to make more money on the short-term investment than going out 5 years. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you. So if we go on to the next slide, this is just
before we go to the next slide, just if you could expand a little bit. I think we all have an idea of what's causing inflation, but maybe you could expand on it. What do you think the reasons we're having this inflation?
And again, this is a lot from my perspective, is that if we look back from when the pandemic was, a big point was that the federal government threw so much money at everything that initially when people were locked down, had limited access and things, what they started doing is spending money on goods. Oh, I'm going to renovate this. I need a new refrigerator. And the problem was, with the world locked down and everything else, demand for goods increased significantly, but the supplies weren't there. So initially we saw inflation grow very significantly in the goods sector. Then the goods sector, as it started, the world sort of got back to semi-normal. Those goods prices actually have come down, not decreased, but in a sense the rate of inflation has gone down. And then it shifted to the other things like wages. Well, the price of everything's gone up, so I need my wages to go up, and now I'm demanding more for that. So that's continuing to support inflation. Housing prices, as the Fed measures, remains elevated, even if the market in itself is facing significant challenges. It doesn't mean the prices are going down. So those are real concerns. I have real concerns with what the federal government has been spending is driving initial inflation. And that's one of the things on the broader, longer term outlook that become very concerning to me. You know, the amount of the federal debt, you know, over $33 trillion, and the interest rates that we're having to pay on that debt is increasing. So if you were financing all your debt at 0%, that's basically free money. You know, why not borrow it? But now when it's 4 or 5%, that the quarterly interest we're paying is like $1 trillion. So long-term impacts on the U.S. economy and could be inflationary, because the way to get out of that for the federal government is inflation goes up. 33 trillion is actually only worth 17 trillion because I've inflated the dollar. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
Did it answer your question?
You did.
Okay.
Good answer.
A question on that. When you say the federal government threw a lot of, you're talking about the fact they printed what $3 trillion, you know, 30% of the dollars that exist now didn't exist before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then, you know, helicoptered out to people. So a lot of people had a lot of money to spend and do things on it. So a lot of money flowed into the economy in a short amount of time that wasn't reflective of just sort of general growth. The amount of dollars in supply should grow over time because of the population, everything, but the amount that it grew in that time was way out of whack.
Are we correcting it, or can we correct it?
I hope we can correct it over time, but I see it as being a significant challenge just because the Congress does not seem to have any willingness to cut spending or, you know, face the financial realities that they have to do. So
It seems like we're mortgaging the next generation, but a heck of an obligation on them.
Oh, without a doubt, you know. I'm 65, so I have a different outlook, but, you know, my daughter who's 26 will have a different challenges and potentially a worse quality of life than I was able to enjoy because of those factors. So again, it's just a big concern of me. I try to remain optimistic that, yeah, we'll get the ship turned around, but, you know, we haven't done it yet. On the next slide, just to say, this is, again, only the funds that we manage. The blue area is what the actual allocations were as of December 31st. The gray bars are showing you what your policy allows. We're just telling you that everything's in compliance with your policy and code, that we're not doing things that are outside of compliance. The next slide is just a certificate of compliance that reinforces what we said. And then if we go to this slide, this is saying what we did during the quarter. So there were treasuries that matured during the quarter, and no, there were corporate securities that matured in the quarter. So we bought some more corporates, and then we also bought some U.S. treasuries. So those were the sectors we put money back into where we saw opportunities. The next slide is just to show you the different colors show the different sectors. Over time, it changes based on what we see available in the market and what we think will add value to you. You can see that we've gone down from corporates and commercial paper and focused on mostly treasuries and agencies, the safest, most liquid investments out there. So those are the opportunities we're looking for. From a return standpoint, if we go to the next slide, this slide shows you your total return, which includes the value of unrealized gains and losses. Interest rates going up, the market value of existing securities decrease in value. When interest rates fall, though, it goes up. So if we look at the table below, that we see the change in market value over the past 3 months was 231,000. Interest rates fell, the value of those increased. But if you look at the 3-year number, you still see an unrealized loss in that because interest rates rose so much. We were basically at 0, and now we're at 4 and 5%. So there's still some embedded unrealized losses that will take time to go out. If we go to the next slide, this is showing you the same return information, but excluding those unrealized gains and losses. The thing that I really want to point out is you can see how the chart at the end is starting to accelerate up. New investments, higher yields providing earnings. So your interest earnings for the past 3 months was 242,000. Over the past 10 years, you've averaged 104,000 per quarter. So you can see that the rate of earnings currently we're earning, again, we're certainly not earning 12, 15%, but are better than where we've been for most of the past 10 years. And that concludes my presentation, unless you have any questions.
I think it's open to the board if there's any questions.
I like the comment, Robert. I do appreciate your statistics and stats. I wasn't saying that directly to you, but it's great that you brought up to the attention to the community and our board. But it just drives me nuts to see we return 5% and it's going to cost 10, 12, 14% to continue to grow, build infrastructure for the agency. And be able to keep the costs down, which is going to be almost impossible the way it's going right now. Thank you.
And I might say your presentation was very good, very easy to follow, and it adds quite a bit being here versus just on Zoom. And we've had some presentations on Zoom, and it seemed like people were speed reading right there. So yours wasn't. It was good right there.
I'm glad to hear it. I do have a bad habit of trying to speed read through things, but the questions were good in the comments, so that helped a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your
Is there
time.
any other questions from staff?
Nope.
Okay, thank you
Richard.
much.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Much.
for coming out.
Okay, so that brings us to Board Order 882. Consider impossible action to accept and file the PFM investment portfolio report and for the fourth quarter ending December 31st, 2023. I make a motion we approve it.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Director Paris is the second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried.
Okay, that brings us to A3, consider possible action to accept and file the check registry list for the period of January 11th, 2024 through January 31st, 2024.
All right. Good evening, Director Donato and members of the board. So on page 51 of your packet is the beginning of the checklist. And as always, we went through this in detail with the Finance Committee. Just a couple of highlights on page 1. Payment to DWR, just over $2.1 million. That was for the month of December's variable cost associated with moving water through the State Water Project. Director Dias brought up the point that we should see that cost decreasing in for next month because as you remember in 2023 we were moving a lot of water for banking and meeting our demands. So we ceased banking operation. So the water being delivered starting in January is just to meet our local demands. So next month we'll see that number decrease. Director Donato mentioned health insurance for the employees. It's item number 31 on the second page. It is a little bit higher this month, as Director Donato mentioned. It's due to the increased cost in health benefits for the agency and the fact that we have 2 new employees that were backfills from existing positions that were approved as part of the budget. But whenever we bring a new employee on, we have to kind of front load the health benefits for those employees. So everything else is pretty much in line.
Matt, wait a second. I was told in last December it was 93,000, 94,000. And the difference is not because of theirs, it's up over $10,000, $12,000. Okay, so they didn't, I'm sure, so I mean, I don't think that cost that much. Did it?
I'm sorry if I misstated that or emphasized that it was due to those new employees, but it was a combination of increased health benefits, roughly 10% increase in health benefits, plus those two new employees.
And you know what? I want to comment that I'm 100% in support of giving the employees the best possible benefits. I just want to show you what Aetna and all these guys, Kaiser, are charging us an extra 10, 12% increase. That's all I want to point out.
Yep. Thank you. So be happy to answer any other questions you may have on the checklist, but everything else is in line.
Okay, has the board had a chance to review that? We have one.
Yeah, I'll move this as Director Donato 883 that we approve the accept the check registry.
I'll second the motion. This is Keith.
Director Donato and Director Dias. Is there any further questions or comments? Madam Secretary, if we could have a roll call.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to 884, consider possible action and second file revenue and expense reports for the second quarter of fiscal year, and I think Matt's going to give us a presentation on that.
Yes, thank you, Director Donato. So on page 60 of your packet is the revenue versus expense report, and this covers the period of July 1st through December 31st, 2023. So every quarter, we like to look at how we're tracking on actual revenue and expenses versus what we budgeted. So this is, if everything perfect world, we're at 50%. So 50% is kind of the target percentage of where we'd like to be. And I'll rather than go through this line by line like we did with Finance Committee, I'll kind of focus on the bottom summary, which shows the total revenue being 62% of what we budgeted. So we've generated more revenue with water sales for the first 6 months than what we planned in our budget. A lot of that's due to the high summer months of July, August, September are in this first 50% period of the year. So we do expect the water sales to drop off for the next few months. So we're pretty confident we'll come in right at 100%. So we're ahead a little bit on what we generated on revenue side. And if you look at total expenses, we're 47% of budget, which shows that we've expensed a little less than what we budgeted. So we're doing good shape, revenue and expense-wise. One thing that was brought up by the Finance Committee is if you look under operating expenses, we have various categories that align with our budget, but we're going to, at their request, expand those categories to give a little bit more detail. For example, fees and services is pretty general. The next time we do this report, we're going to provide more detail to what's included in those categories. So bottom line, we're doing pretty good at tracking with what we budgeted for this current cycle. Happy to answer any question.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Motion would be in order for item 884, the expense and revenue report.
Okay, I move on to board order 884 regarding revenues and expenses report for second quarter of fiscal year.
Motion by Director Donato. We have a second.
President, I'll second that.
A second by Director Miller. Is there any further questions or discussion on board order 884? Madam Secretary, if we could have a roll call.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried.
Okay, that brings us now to 885, to consider possible action on approving a purchase order with International Water Screens to rebuild both Fairmont Moss screens and not to exceed the $65,000 asset replacement project. Operations Manager John Bozigian will give us an overview.
Thank you, Frank. Good evening.
Okay,
So purchase orders over $25,000 we bring before the board for approval, finance and the board. This is for the rebuilding of the Fairmont Moss screens. The Fairmont Moss screens are at the entry of the west feeder out at the Fairmont turnout. They prevent solids from entering the pipeline. And as you know, we put a lot of water through these screens last year, about 65,000 acre feet. Since the last rebuild, we put about 200,000 acre feet through these screens. So we pulled them. They're pretty worn out, and they do need to be rebuilt. Farm Pump and Irrigation built the screens, but they have gotten out of the screen business, and there's really only one traveling screen facility left in California that's able to do this job. It's International Water Screens. They have built the Amargosa screens. They built the High Desert screens. So they built some East Side screens for us. So they're very aware of AVAC, and we've used them quite a bit. We budgeted about $80,000 for this project. Thus far, we've spent $10,000 for a crane service that will remove them, transport them to the facility for rebuild, and put them back in. International Water Screens with taxes, they're going to be about $65,000 to completely rebuild these screens, replace the stainless fabric and so forth. So that brings us to about $75,000. So we're a little bit under budget on this project. So we'd ask the board to support this International Water Screens in a not to exceed amount of $65,000.
There's really no choice on this.
Yeah, George, it's one of those things. You're right. We don't have a choice.
We've got to keep the plant maintained.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
John, how long does the screens last for after we rebuild them?
You know, depending on how much water we bank this year, if we're going to bank water, I think you can put a couple 100,000 acre feet through these screens without any problem. So it just depends on how wet of a year we have, how much banking we do. But, you know, I would think 5 to 7 years of normal banking is probably reasonable before they need a complete rebuild like we're doing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every time Teresa comes up, she makes his money. When you come up, you spend money.
I know. But I'm consistent, George. You have to appreciate that.
You know, thank you. Good job.
Okay, thank you. One more thing I would say is we're going to also bring an invoice for the Forts Hill screens that are being rebuilt while the plant shut down, but we'll bring that next month.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks, John.
Is there any further questions? If not, for 8A5, a motion would be in order.
Okay, I'll move on board order 885 to approve not to exceed 65,000 on replacement of the moss screens.
A motion by Director Donato. We have a second.
Second.
By Director Van Dam. Okay. If there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Donato, is there anything further in the finance?
No, that's it. That concludes the report. Thank you.
Okay, we'll turn it right over to you. Next
Okay.
one.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. So now we're going to go to 8B1. It's monthly updates on the High Desert Water Bank. Project Manager Justin.
And maybe before you get started, Justin,
Yeah.
before the benefits of Director Donato and Dias, just to let you know who we have in the room this evening for the High Desert Water Bank design and CM team. We have Joe Long with Stantec. He's the design engineer. Why don't you wave, Joe? We got Earl Swartz with Kennedy Jenks. He's the construction manager, as well as Tian Ing with Kennedy Jenks on the construction management side, and Paul Chow with Kennedy Jenks on the program management. We also have Tim Leo with Montgomery Associates on the phone. So we've got the whole team here to answer questions and provide input.
And I might say we do appreciate you coming in occasionally. Thank you much.
Sorry about that, Justin.
No worries. Thank you. Good evening, President Lane, members of the board. Not quite as good as Teresa, because I don't bring money, but at least I'll spend Met's money, at least for this portion of the project. First item here we have today is the monthly update for the High Desert Water Bank project. So we'll get right into that. This is the typical format that we've seen. And jumping in first, as we always do, the executive summary, remind ourselves and the public what the goals of the project are, banking and recovering up to 70,000 acre feet per year in the project, and a total storage of 280,000 acre feet. Key agreement principles are listed there. Essentially, in return for first priority right to that banking capacity, Metropolitan agreed to pay all of the capital costs for the construction as well as the ongoing operation and maintenance of the project. And in return, Avek gets $100 per acre foot escalated with CPI for every acre foot returned from the project back to Metropolitan. Moving into the next section, we've got our map there. Nothing has changed on this map since the last time, but just to refresh memories, we've got the location of all of the planned wells shown in the blue and orange dots. Blue indicates wells that have already been drilled. Orange indicates future wells that have yet to be drilled. The pipelines here shown in green have already been completed, installed, backfilled. And there's some kind of dashed purple lines on here, maybe a little tough to see depending on how close you zoom in. That's the recovery piping that Stantec is currently designing. So that would be a future construction project for the site. We also have the aqueduct turnout, which we know is completed, shown here in this bidirectional arrow. And the background shows the locations of the recharge basins that have been constructed and are nearly completed at this point in time. To make looking at photos as we go through the presentation a little bit easier, we've labeled the areas. Stage 1 recharge here to the south, Stage 2 south in this upper portion here, and then Stage 2 north is this portion up in here. Currently, there's no banking going on at the High Desert Water Bank project, so Metropolitan will continue to reevaluate hydrology to see if they have available water to bank in the project as allocations increase through the year. In short-term goals for the project over the next 3 months are to close out the turnout contract. We still have some negotiations to do with the contractor on closing that project out. Continuing construction of the recharge basins and pipelines. We hope we'll get pretty close to finalizing all of that within the next 3 months. And then Stantec's team's working on finalizing the groundwater modeling report. We recently got some comments from that back from Metropolitan. And will be one action item for tonight is to issue the next well drilling package out for bids. And we've got some detailed slides on that following the monthly update report here. Moving into program management, Kennedy Jenks still continues to do a good job of tracking the overall project progress and being our liaison between AVAC and the design team, making sure that they're aware of their upcoming deliverables and are working hard to meet those targets, making sure that we get things on time and efficiently. And then KJ's construction management team is working in the field to monitor and inspect the construction work that's ongoing in the project site. Anything to add to that, Paul or Earl?
I guess this last month we're doing technical reviews of design that Stantec and Joe and his team have been putting before. So we've had our design engineers provide a third-party review of the technical documents so that we'll be in good shape as we finish construction.
Yep.
This is a question right there. We have Kennedy Jenks and we have another company, Construction Management. Do we need both companies?
Yeah, Kennedy Jenks contract is for program management. They serve, like Paul said, all the technical review of the design documents. And then their construction management side is actively working with the contractors in the field day to day to inspect the progress of the construction and make sure that they're building what they were hired to build.
That's a completely separate team?
Yeah, I mean, Paul's a little bit of overlap between the two. But yeah, Earl and Tien are the construction management team, and then Paul's the program management team. Upcoming board decisions shown on the right-hand side here. Once we close out the contract with Blois Construction for the turnout, we would come back to the committee and board to authorize the notice of completion, and then following that, issue their retention that we've withheld from their contract. And then items B and C are on your agenda for tonight, which is to authorize the bidding of drilling package number 3. as well as authorizing a treatment study amendment for Stantec's contract. And we've got detailed slides on those following this. Moving forward into engineering and field work, this is work that Stantec and their team are working on. Montgomery and Associates, Matt mentioned, they're on the line tonight. They're working to finalize the groundwater modeling report. Stantec's team is continuing to progress the well equipping and recovery package. They've provided us with a set of those drawings, and Avek and KJ's teams have provided comments back to that. So they'll be working to incorporate those and move that forward to a level that's ready to bid out to contractors. And then they recently completed the well drilling package 3 design, which is we hope to put out to bid here pretty shortly. Joe, anything to add to that?
Yeah, come to the microphone, please.
Come up.
Actually, all I was going to say, directors, is I see 3 bullets there, but my list feels a lot longer than that.
All right, thanks, Joe. Moving into the financial side, we have our contracts shown here. Committee member Donato recommended we add some of the completed packages onto this, which that list is going to continue to grow. But shown here, you can see at the bottom, there's some red text next to a few of the packages, and that's drilling package number 1. We did that back in 2021. Those are the first 4 wells that were drilled out there. Drilling package number 2, that's the 6 wells that was completed by Bakersfield Well and Pump. And then below that, so we've got the design and engineering services contracts with Stantec, and then the 2 contractors that worked on those projects, Pacific Coast Well Drilling and Bakersfield Well and Pump, listed there. We also have a couple of environmental related contracts that have been closed out to date. On the top half of this, you can, starting kind of in the middle, we have our 2 active construction projects here. You can see the totals of the contract and then the percentages. This, I always like to look at the takeaways here, the percentages of that contract that's been paid. And you can see Blois construction pretty much done. We're just withholding that retention, as I mentioned. And then Nicholas construction, they're a good portion of the way done, about 88% paid for the project. And considering where they're at in the timeline of their contract, they're well ahead of schedule. And then you see at the very top our program management, construction management contracts for Kennedy Jenks, as well as Stantec's array of design packages that have been awarded by the board so far to date. All in all, looking at the percentage of those contracts that have been paid, everything is tracking very well with regards to where we're at in the budget versus where we're at with the progress of each of those contracts.
Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
We're down the line here. We're actually getting some work done. Good
We
job,
are.
everybody.
Yeah.
It's exciting to see the red complete section.
Yeah. Very exciting. Yeah. Good to remind ourselves of what we've actually accomplished so far. So good suggestion from committee member Donato.
When do we start phase 2?
My eyes are on this prize for now.
Now let's get this one.
So it doesn't get too far ahead of us. Maybe let's go ahead and the board order 8B2, consideration possible action advertisement of drilling package number 3. Is there anything further you have on that?
I do. Yeah. There, after we get through the next couple slides on the monthly update, we have a separate set of slides just to go over drilling package number 3.
Yeah.
Yep. Moving into still financial related, this is a summary of our program capital program account. So this is the account that's funded by Metropolitan, and then we pay all of our consultants and contractors out of this account. Not too much exciting here, but just bottom line here, we've got about $4.3 million in that account to date. Metropolitan has deposited $87 million into that account so far. And we currently have one outstanding invoice to Metropolitan that's due the beginning of March. That's about $1.9 million. So everything there is tracking well. And we'll move into construction summary, just a very brief construction report, but I'll invite Earl up here to provide the next couple slides.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, Good evening, Board of Directors, and good evening, General Manager. Tonight I'll present to you two projects: the turn-in project, and also the recharge project. And let me see, do I just flip it that way? There we go. Okay. Yeah, and let me grab that. Okay. Perfect. Okay, thank you. All right, so on the high desert, on the Blois construction project, all work, of course, is completed. The next steps, as Justin, you've mentioned, finalizing the change order negotiations and presenting the change orders to the committee and the board for review and approval, and then issuing the notice of completion. Great, thanks.
The change orders, have they been submitted to staff at this point? Is it about the change orders? What's the status of those?
Yeah, they're, maybe Justin, if you want to mention on the status at the moment.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, all change orders have been submitted to staff. We've issued our responses to the contractor, and with Earl and Tien's help, we've had two, they call meet and confer meetings, where the contractor and us have gotten together to discuss, our individual stances on the merit of the change orders. So we've had those negotiations. They were, somewhat successful in moving the ball forward at least, but not quite, didn't bring us to a close. So we've gone back and forth a couple of times with providing some backup information to the contractor. They've responded. We've got a meeting on the books for this Friday with the contractor to come in and meet with myself and Matt, and hopefully come to something that we can agree to bring back to the High Desert Water Bank Committee and then ultimately the board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So with the recharge project that's on the screen now, just an update there. Of course, it's Nicholas Construction. Contract completion is through this September 10th of this year. Stage 1 basins and pipeline, of course, have been completed. Stage 2 pipeline has also been completed. The Stage 2 recharge basins, which were on the exhibits as the areas of Stage 2 South and Stage 2 North basins, that's still ongoing. Their next steps are installing a 72-inch and a 36-inch butterfly valves, and that will hopefully be conducted in next month in March. Following that as well, installing turnouts 3A and 3B, and that's anticipated in March and to kind of go into April, and then and grading the push-up berms, and that would also be conducted in March and April. Great, thank you. So as we can see here, just a picture on the left, that's the Stage 1 recharge basins, the ones that were recharging, but that has stopped recharging since December 31st. And the picture on the right, that is the area at Avenue A8, looking westerly. And that's just aggregate base placement. Actually, it's riprap placement up for the armoring on the basins. Yes. Picture on the left, that's looking at the Stage 2 area, Stage 2 South recharge basins. And that would be basins 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27 as the picture looks westerly due west. And then the picture on the right is the Stage 2 North area, basins 20 and 21. Okay, well, and that does complete my presentation. If you guys have any questions, otherwise, thank you.
Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Earl. Thank you, Earl. Yeah, there's the contractor out there going to do a heavy push. We're talking with the CM team right before this meeting. So it looks like March, April, May is going to be kind of when the bulk of whatever remaining work is needed to be done. So we anticipate that contractor will beat their contract completion date, which would be good for everybody. So hopeful for that. Section 8 here of the monthly update is just other items, anything that we feel that the board should be aware of or we should mention. So the only item that I can think of for this month is we've talked about the transmission line for SCE, the 66 kV line they're bringing in from the nearest substation. So we have a kickoff meeting with SCE's team on February 21st. So we'll get a better sense of what the schedule is and what the next steps are once we have that meeting. So we're looking forward to that. We've kind of been eagerly anticipating this for some time now. So hopefully that'll be good, and we'll work extremely hard to make sure that we're not the holdup after that. We're going to continue to push SCE and use whatever methods we have available to push them along and get that line installed. And then section 9, just recapping, these are on your agenda tonight, but these are the 2 board action items, the drilling package 3 and the treatment facility study report. And so Director Donato, if you are ready, that concludes the monthly update report. And unless there are any questions,
just one question.
Sure.
Would it be if aerial photo be available, the whole project that shows the different basins, how they're numbered?
Yeah, we can definitely get something like that. Yeah, we have, for on this map, we could go through and label each of the basins with their numbers if that would be helpful.
That's helpful, but an aerial photo would be good if we could get that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Something like these pictures, but from above. No. Okay. Yeah, we'll see what we can get. It's a big site.
They refer to a lot of numbers, and we're not familiar with them.
Yeah, understood. Okay. Yeah, we'll bring something like that for the next update.
Okay, as far as the first item, you're finished with everything on that?
Yeah.
Justin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the board order would be for item 8B2 would be in order.
Well, we've got a quick presentation on this one before a board order.
On 8B2?
On 8B2, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I've got a few slides.
Okay, just ask if that was ready, but it's not.
Oh, no, sorry. We were done with the monthly update. I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're ready to move forward with 8B2 if you are.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. So this will be for the drilling package number 3. So Stantec and their team have provided plans and specifications that are ready for bid for drilling package number 3. As you know, drilling package number 1 was the first 4 wells completed by Pacific Coast Well Drilling, and then drilling package number 2 was another set of 6. So we've got 10 wells currently drilled at the project site.
Yeah, can you travel back in time and tell me what the punch is doing?
I muted him.
Oh, okay, thanks. So we're ready to go out for drilling package number 3. Shown on the screen here is our map of the project site. I mentioned earlier that the orange dots are wells yet to be drilled. The blue are already completed. And so the orange dots with red circles here are the 6 wells that have been identified to be included in drilling package number 3. Those wells were identified because they are located in areas that the current contractor, Nicholas Construction, has already completed. So there will be no issues with conflicts with that contractor or any future contractor that may come onto the site prior to these 6 wells being completed. So that was kind of the reasoning behind the selection process for these 6 was to avoid any potential conflicts like that. And so we've got some details on what's included within this bidding package. One item that we wanted to discuss with the board or have our consultants talk about was the well drilling method that's been selected for this particular drilling package. And Tim Leo from Montgomery & Associates is their hydrogeology lead. He's going to speak to this next slide here. So Tim, if you're ready, go for it.
Sure, Justin. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Well, good evening, everybody, directors. As Justin indicated, my name is Tim Leo, and I'm a hydrogeologist in Montgomery & Associates, and we're a subconsultant to the Stantec team, taking care of the hydrogeologic aspects of the project. And Justin asked me earlier this week to put together a slide that just talked about the drilling method we're using to drill the recovery wells and options we might have looked at or chosen instead. So this slide attempts to do that. So on the left side are a series of questions that were asked of us to respond to, and the answers that we put together on the right-hand side of the slide. So let's go through this real quick, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any after I go through this. So what drilling method are we using? Today we've used the reverse mud rotary drilling method, which is essentially a rotary bit turning in the borehole, and there's a mud fluid in the borehole to stabilize the borehole walls and to lift the cuttings out of the borehole. And by reverse, meaning that the mud circulates down the annulus outside the drill rod, up the drill rod with the cuttings and into the mud pit. So that's the method we're using. It's a traditional method used for large diameter groundwater wells. And so the next question is, what is this the best choice we could use? And the answer is I think yes. This method is pretty much the go-to standard for large diameter well drilling, large diameter boreholes like we're drilling at the high desert water bank. Boreholes are as large as 32 inches at the top of the borehole during the rain. And like I said earlier, borehole stability is critical to keep the wells open. And we have to lift the cuttings out of the hole to clean the hole out to build the well in. So this method is very good for that. It's the most common method used in the drilling industry now, in our experience. And in fact, we just bid a couple of projects here in Arizona, and all the contractors bid reverse mud rotary method. The other thing is that being the most common method used out there are more drilling firms that can offer that technology, that method, which generally leads to a favorable cost for this drilling work. There are other methods you could use. There are other rotary methods that are available, direct rotary. You can use a more complex dual rotary method. If in some cases that's needed for certain drilling conditions. You can consider other fluids, which are typically considered in other drilling environments like hard rock, foams, air. Mud is still typical for alluvial sediments like we're drilling in here at the high desert water bank. There are casing advanced methods that can be considered, like an air rotary casing hammer, which drives a casing down into the formation and to stabilize the borehole instead of using a fluid like a mud. Not used much anymore, but a lot of wells have been drilled in the western United States over the years with the cable tools. So there are still some cable tool drillers out there, but it's not a technology or method it's used much anymore. And why didn't we choose some of these other methods? Well, just simply they're less common and fewer drilling firms offer them. So undoubtedly they would lead to higher cost. They're typically all slower, maybe not all of them. Dual rotary might be not always slower, but they generally take more time to drill the wells. And there are other trade-offs to consider. Borehole size. Some of the methods you can't drill the large diameters we need for these wells, and some don't remove the cuttings quite as well. So that's really the rationale that we use to select the drilling method. And the first 10 wells we're drilling reverse mud rotary, and they're very good wells. And so we intend to continue using this method and bid the next 6 wells with this method in the technical specifications. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well-respected driller in the Antelope Valley that had been here for decades, since retired, but he questioned that method, and he was talking about another method. It was a number of years ago, and unfortunately, I don't remember that method. And so I can see you're very sold on this method, and it's probably the best. But anyway, that explanation was not that good, which you had given.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
I said the alternatives, you passed over them very fast right there.
Oh, yeah. The alternatives, I mean, the other methods are, depending on which method you're interested in considering, there always are trade-offs when you're selecting a drilling method. And, the method that we're using is just certainly the most common method for the work we're doing here. And it just works very well for this type of environment that we're drilling in, this unconsolidated alluvial sediments. The other methods generally are going to be more costly, and you're not going to get the competition from the drilling firms to give you the best cost. Those are the main drivers for why we're using this method.
All right, thanks, Tim.
Matt, I don't think you were here when Rotman gave that presentation. It was the other.
Yeah, I don't recall that. What method he was
Frank and
pitching.
Keith, do you remember that presentation?
George, I remember it, and I think his point was that we get better production from a well using his method. It cleaned out the drilling mud better and left us with a better well, but I don't remember any more details than that.
Yeah, it's been a number of years ago.
Yeah, I agree. We had it was Aaron, and I think Rotman came to the meeting and explained the difference.
He did.
And did I hear that it was an error method?
Yes, it's been so many years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, happy to if there are other methods out there that have worked well, I'm happy to look into them. But I really do feel like, with all the trade-offs that exist in drilling wells, I think the track we're on, I think, is a good one. And I think the 10 wells that we have drilled to date, I think, demonstrate the success of this method. And in general, the reverse mud rotary method is one of the better methods for well development. I mean, you're not really using a lot of additives in the mud. The mud is really created largely by the cuttings in the hole, and so you don't really have a lot of.
And you're on that method, and it very well may be the best method, but there are conflicting opinions. And the gentleman that made that presentation a number of years ago, he was a very well respected well driller in the Antelope Valley.
Sure.
So very difficult for us to question one way or another without somebody, an expert, down evaluating the different methods. I might just add, where are you located?
I live in Tucson, Arizona.
I wish we would have a representative in person, but anyway.
Yeah, I will make every effort to be attending in person from now on. Certainly when I have to speak to the group.
Okay, thank you.
That'd
Go
be
ahead, finish your presentation, please.
Yeah, okay, got it. Sounds good. So moving into some of the details that are included within the bidding package for drilling package number 3, we've included a borehole depth of 1,150. This is typical. This was the same in the first 2 packages. The average that we've drilled to date, about 1,100. Some of these I included the averages because if the board recalls, on both of the first 2 drilling packages, we came back to the board with a quantity change order. So the drillers, the way we bid it was kind of then as an example, what we needed to get competitive equal bids from multiple contractors. And then in events where they drilled a little bit deeper or used screen casing a little bit more than what that example bid was, we had to come back and do a change order on a per linear foot basis to make that adjustment. And so we took those couple lessons learned from the first 2 drilling packages and went back and looked at what the actual built conditions were in the field and incorporated that into this drilling package so that if there are quantity adjustments, they're more likely than not going to be in AVEC's favor where we're not issuing, once we award the drilling package, that should be, the total cost, if not less, based on the quantities drilled in the field. So that was kind of the rationale behind selecting the lengths of some of these based on what we've seen in the completed wells and drilling packages number 1 and number 2. So you see the borehole depth there, screen casing length, we're bidding 800 feet. Averages has been just about 700. We're bidding 383 feet for the blank casing. The average has been a little bit higher than that. But we should see some trade-offs probably between those when we get the actual field conditions. Cost estimates are included in the second grouping of bullets there. The cost estimate developed for this package is about $10.3 million, 1.7 per well. We budgeted 10.5 almost for this package, which is just right around that same per well cost. For reference, drilling package 2, once all the bids came in from the contractors, that was about 9.7. So that was about 1.6 per well. So there's a little inflation factor thrown in here, but we'll see once the competitive process plays out what numbers we actually get on this drilling package.
How many people do you think may bid on that?
We've had pretty good interest in the past. I know we've had 3 or 4 on the past. Have you been hearing anything, Joe?
I've received calls from the chief passenger, West Coast, is very much interested in the project. John Zimmer or Bakersfield is very much interested in the project, and Mark Best just called and very interested in the project. So all 3 compete and they compete hard against each other, so we should have a favorable bidding environment.
And the design team has, in those conversations, have heard that it's a somewhat favorable time to drill wells right now. So we're hoping we make the best of that as well. So we'll see. Should we get authorization to bid this out tonight? The anticipated construction schedule after all the packages come in and we come back to the board to award that contract. The anticipated construction schedule would be April of this year through January of 2025. I'd be happy to answer any questions that may come up. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, I made a note here to myself. We've talked in the past, or it's come up a couple times during our meetings about those 10 wells that are already drilled that are just kind of sitting out there, and what's the plan for those so that they don't, kind of plug up or gunk up, or that we somewhat try to keep them fresh. So we've had conversations with the design and hydrogeology team about that. We considered including some type of video into this package and maybe installation. There's no equipment in there. There's no pump, there's no motor, there's nothing. So we've talked about, should we mobilize, have this contractor mobilize a temporary pump and motor to pump those wells now, maybe do some video review of them. Right now, it doesn't sound like that right now is the appropriate time to do that. More likely than not, right before we get into the well equipping package, where they're actually going to set the motor, the pump, and everything into the hole, that would be the appropriate time to do a video, see what we see first. If it requires mediation, that would probably be the appropriate time to do that. So we've talked about maybe doing some videoing on our own just to see what it looks like, in case there does appear to be a need to do some intermediate remediation. But what we don't want is to go in and remediate the wells now and then have to do it again right before we set the pump and motor. So just wanted to follow up on that previous conversation that we've had. But
when's the pump and motor going to be set?
Joe, what's our timeline on that for right now?
That's 2 years out.
2 years, he said.
So that'll be the last stage of the recovery system. We're pushing that out to the last part of the project because we want to have one contractor come in and set all the equipment, set the electrical and everything else. So it'll be right at the very tail end of the next construction phase. So, any other questions?
So that'll be on all the wells at one time that they're setting all the bowls
in the plan here, the team has worked out a plan where we'll go out with this drilling package, and we had talked about actually adding a couple of alternative wells into this. So if the contractor is doing a good job, they'll get awarded 2 more wells at this particular juncture within this package. And that will also be bid in the whole overall packaging. And then that will leave us about 7 or 8 wells left. I can't do math in my head, so.
We're doing 29 wells total?
There's 27 total plus the agricultural well. And then there'll be a small well to provide water service up to the MCC building.
Okay, so this will be 6 and with a possible addition
8.
of 2.
Right.
Okay.
So we're trying to push it forward to get it out in front of the construction. So when they get into building the recovery system, all the wells are complete and ready for acceptance of the final.
The only downfall I see with a little bit of that is you're putting it off. Everything just is higher all the time. I mean,
right.
The longer you go, the more it costs you.
Yeah. So the plan to bid out the next package will be within the next couple of quarters. So we should be wrapping that up and starting construction early next year, I think, what our plan is for the recovery system.
So the completion date's in stone then, in June of 25?
Of this package,
Uh-huh.
it's not stone yet. We got to get it out to the contractors.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, the other thing we've discussed that would be a benefit. You know, if we go and set pumps and motors and do all of that right now before we have any electrical out there, our warranty that we always require the contractors to give us starts ticking when they complete the project. So we could put ourselves in a position where we've got pumps and motors installed, no electrical to run anything, and our warranty just runs out. So that's the other benefit to kind of leaving it to a little bit further out when Edison's closer to getting their power installed. Yeah.
How big are those electric motors on those wells?
600 horsepower.
Yeah.
It may range a little bit depending on location, but on average. You might want to also mention for Jerry's benefit is that we're also putting in a manual transfer switch, so we can go out before we get Edison power and run generator power just to exercise the well.
Right.
All right, so I'd be happy to answer any additional questions, but at this point, the recommendation from the High Desert Water Bank Committee and AVEC and Metropolitan staff would be for the full board to authorize staff to advertise drilling package number 3 for competitive bids.
Okay, their own detailed report. Okay, we need a motion on 8B2 regarding project advertised for our new wells. Motion would be in order.
President, I'll move on.
Well, second.
Okay, we have a motion in a second. Dr. Miller and Van Dam. And there's no further questions, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Karras,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Yeah.
So Stantec prepared a technical memo describing the arsenic treatment facility options that would be suitable for use at the High Desert Water Bank. That memo was provided to Metropolitan Water District for review. They looked at it, and their comments were that they would prefer Stantec to complete a more detailed technical study on the treatment facility requirements. So what the study would do is it would aim to better define the treatment facility goals, various design details, so a little bit more detailed than what the tech memo described, getting down into kind of the weeds of what this treatment facility would look like, and eventually produce a very detailed cost estimate for the construction and operation of the treatment facility. The outcome of this treatment study would then provide Metropolitan Water District staff with sufficient information and confidence in the cost estimate to return to their board of directors to request the funding and authorization to move forward with the final detailed design of the treatment facility and funding to construct the treatment facility itself. Stantec provided a proposal and a scope of work to do this treatment facility study. That was provided to Metropolitan Water District. They had some minor comments, and those were provided back to Stantec to revise their proposal and fee. And they did so. Metropolitan is good with the proposal and the scope of work that's being provided, and asked us to come to our committee and board to get authorization for Stantec to do this work. So be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
From the board, is there any questions, comments? Justin, I have one. That's not exactly a small amount. Why would you see an amendment versus going out to bid?
So typically with the design contract like this, keeping that consistency between the design team that's already well aware of the project site, having that they already did the treatment tech memo and are keenly aware of the site conditions, an amendment would be the way to go for this project. Metropolitan concurs with that.
Yeah. Why couldn't you go out to bid? That's a large amount.
You could. I would anticipate that the fee would most likely from an outside firm be a little bit higher, being that they have to come up to speed and get all of the knowledge and background that Stantec already has as part of the work that they've done on the site. It certainly
Is
could
there
be
any
done.
negotiation on the price?
Yeah, I mean, Metropolitan reviewed it and they provided some comments and actually increased the fee for this contract. So they added some additional scope that they wanted to see.
But as far as the price of Sandec, was there any negotiation?
Not other than that.
Matt, what is your comment?
I would agree with what Justin said. You know, Stantec has been the design lead for this project from day one, and I think it'd be a huge effort for a new firm to come in at this point and come up to speed on what would be needed for the treatment facility, and we most likely see a cost increase associated with that.
The scope what the study is going to be, or is it not?
I'm sorry, what was that?
They're very limited on the scope what the study is going to be.
It is very limited, and Metropolitan is the one driving the scope of work.
But I'm talking about trying to get the best price available.
Yeah, you know, and then in talking to Metropolitan staff, they spoke highly of Stantec. You know, they have a lot of consulting contracts with Stantec and is associated with Metropolitan's treatment processes, so they feel very comfortable with Stantec.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I do. This is Director Nato. I got two of them. One, why wasn't the dollar amount in our agenda? That's the first question.
Oh, listed on the agenda itself, Director Donato?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the board order right now. There's nothing about, everything else has numbers on it, but this one doesn't have it for some reason.
Yeah, I apologize. That could have been my oversight.
Okay. Second question is, I understand what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense. But can you next time or get the board a letter from Metropolitan? I mean, you work for AVAC, and I like to see Metropolitan in writing say that they don't they approve of that 259.
Yeah, we can do that. We can provide.
Okay, because you said it costs because you made a comment, and I know you didn't mean it to, but you said it's going to cost AVAC more money. It's not costing us anything. It's costing Metropolitan more money if we went out to get somebody else. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know. Don't. I'm not picking on you. I just want to, for the record, I just want to make you look right. So. Yeah, let's get a letter from anything like this in the future. We need a letter. Even we're representing them, and if they say, yeah, we our engineers take a look at this, and this is within the realm, then that's fine. Hit us an email and to you, and then we give it to the board, and that's what should it be.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. And then, when we have big ticket items, I'm sure we could even invite somebody from Metropolitan to attend the meeting and speak on their behalf.
Well, yes, I think a letter would be sufficient. We don't have nothing. It's just that it looks like you're representing and work for Metropolitan, and I want to kind of put a little wall between you and Metropolitan.
Okay.
This board, we need to look at these prices, not just a rubber stamp. And if we're a rubber stamp, they're going to get that feeling very fast, and they're not going to be very competitive in bidding. That's human nature.
Yeah.
And so if this is correct or not, I don't know, and I don't think anybody from staff knows. Sandex presented a price. I'm sure it's very, very liberal. And so if we can do better or not, it's not known by anybody. And so we owe it to Metropolitan, we owe it to the taxpayers to make sure we do business, practices good standards.
Yeah.
And this is not F.
Yeah. And I just want to assure the board that, as Justin said, we've shared the scope of work. We shared the fee breakdown with the number of hours, the hourly rates with Metropolitan staff, and they concur with what was provided. So I just don't want you to think that staff is just passing this through to the AVAC board.
But it's in front of us, Matt. And so we've got to use our best practices right there.
Yeah.
It's not
there's a letter. Like you said, you talk to them, but that's all lip service. We see a lot of that every day in politics. So what I'm saying is I want to protect the agency, protect our relationship, and I want to make sure that we keep the engineering, Syntex and Met, whole. That's basically what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Is there anything
feedback.
further?
No, that's all.
The board?
Mr. President, I move approval of Board Order 8B3.
Motion by Director Parrish, and second.
I'll second.
Director Donato. If there's no further questions, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Parrish,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. That motion carried.
That concludes-
Thank you,
All right,
Director
thank you.
Donato.
Thank you.
Just looking at our agenda, and we have a presentation by our laboratory manager, Jordan Ray. And I know she's got a young child, so if the board doesn't mind, if we could take her out of order, and she's pretty much scheduled towards the end of the agenda. There's no reason she can't do it now, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, if you want to reorganize the agenda, we could take a little break from Justin. He can drink water. And the young mom of Jordan Ray will come up and give a very detailed presentation on the water quality update for the agency.
Are you ready to do that?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Does anybody want to take a 2-minute break before or not? Okay, let's go ahead then.
Okay.
All right.
Good evening, board members. So tonight I will be covering these 3 topics. I got to get to my slides though. It's up there. Sorry. Okay, back to.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'll be covering these 3 topics, regulated constituents, upcoming regulations, and emerging contaminants. So beginning with an overview of our regulations, the California State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Drinking Water, is responsible for regulating public drinking water systems. So this includes oversight of treatment plant operations and compliance with state and federal drinking water regulations. Avek submits several monthly, quarterly, and annual reports to DDW, and this documents compliance with treatment and drinking water regulations. We also submit water quality results electronically to the California Laboratory Intake Portal, known as CLIP, on a monthly basis. So some regulations governing compliance include the surface water treatment rules, groundwater monitoring rule, the revised total coliform rule and total coliform rule, stage 1 and 2 disinfectants, disinfection byproducts rule, and the Safe Drinking Water Act. So these rules aim to ensure public drinking water supplies are safe from bacteriological and chemical contamination. There are over 100 unique constituents required to be monitored with varying frequencies. And Avek collects, processes, and analyzes over 7,500 samples per year on average to ensure compliance with all drinking water standards. Bacteriological tests for total coliform and E. coli are the most common and frequent tests that the lab does. E. coli contamination can lead to acute health effects such as nausea and diarrhea and more pronounced issues for immunocompromised and elderly individuals. Avek's treatment barriers against bacteriological contamination include treatment plant filtration and chlorination. The surface water treatment rule target metric for effective filtration is less than 0.3 NTU, and those are turbidity units. So in the last 10 years, Avek has never exceeded the filtration target. Also, chlorine must be analyzed throughout the distribution system each time a bacteriological test is sampled. The maximum residual disinfectant level, it must not exceed 4.0 milligrams per liter. And then in the last 10 years, Avek has never had a positive test for E. coli from our finished drinking water. Controlling bacteria with chlorine requires careful monitoring of disinfection byproducts. Trihalomethanes and haloacetic acids result from chlorine combining with organic carbon in our source water. So TOC, THMs, and HAs are carefully monitored to ensure compliance. And then this is a graph you've seen pretty frequently. It's our THM locational running annual averages. So the MCL is 80, and we set an internal goal of 64 parts per billion. This allows customers a buffer for their systems. And then this is a graph we haven't really shown before, but it's the locational running annual average for HAAs. THMs and HAAs, they're dual samples, so they have to be collected at the same time. And so by controlling THMs, it also controls HAAs, and it's keeping them well below the MCL of 60. And that's shown up there by the red line. So Avek also uses ozone in our treatment process. Ozone can combine with naturally occurring bromide in the State Water Project, forms the disinfection byproduct bromate, and then bromate is regulated by a running annual average of 10 micrograms per liter. So bromate's regulated in drinking water due to the fact that it's likely to be carcinogenic to people. And then here we have a graph of the combined averages of bromate from each of our treatment plants, their effluents in each system. So we average Kern County and then LA County together. Another regulated constituent, arsenic, it has an MCL of 10 micrograms per liter. Most of the arsenic in drinking water comes from natural rock formations. It's dissolved and deposited into the aquifers as it flows through the rock. Some arsenic health effects include diseases of the cardiovascular system, skin, kidneys, nervous system, or potentially cancer. And then listed here are some of our average arsenic detections. The State Water Project, you see 4.3 micrograms per liter. Westside Water Bank is 4.8. Bench Ranch, 2.0 micrograms per liter. Eastside, we've had no detections. And then our treatment plant effluents are 0.7 micrograms per liter. Nitrate has an MCL of 10 milligrams per liter. Some sources of nitrate in drinking water include runoff or seepage from fertilized agricultural lands, wastewater, septic tanks, urban drainage, and decaying plant debris. Consuming too much nitrate can be harmful, especially for babies. It can affect how blood carries oxygen and can cause methahemoglobinemia, and it's also known as blue baby syndrome. So you can see here some nitrate detections in the State Water Project, 0.37 milligrams per liter, Westside Water Bank, 3.8, Bench Ranch, 5.6, Eastside Water Bank, 1.7 milligrams per liter, and our treatment plant effluents, 0.97 milligrams per liter. So one of the newer regulated contaminants, it's 123 TCP, and it's regulated by an MCL of 5 parts per billion. And to try and help you conceptualize that value, 1 part per billion is equal to 1 second in 32 years. So this MCL was adopted by a state water board in July 2017. It's an exclusively man-made chemical typically found at industrial or hazardous waste sites. Short-term exposure may cause eye and throat irritation, while long-term exposure has led to liver and kidney damage. And we've had no detections of 123 TCP in any of our water sources. In addition to those contaminants, Avek also monitors for 7 radiological compounds, 77 organic compounds, 29 secondary aesthetic standards, and 16 inorganic compounds such as lead and mercury.
Are some of these forever chemicals you're speaking of?
I'm gonna, those aren't regulated yet, so I have some, it's gonna be covered in the emerging contaminants. And so for the last 10 years, none of our all of our samples, have met regulatory standards. And then some year-end water quality for 2023. We had no coliform treatment technique triggers or E. coli MCL violations in bacteriological samples from our distribution system. 100% of monthly samples met EPA turbidity performance standards. We satisfied the EPA groundwater rule for minimum chlorine residual leaving the clear well. All primary and secondary standards were below the established MCLs, and all organic compounds were non-detect for locations sampled in 2023. And so a little regulatory update. And a background on hexavalent chromium. In 2014, the state set an MCL for Chrome 6 at 10 parts per billion. They withdrew this regulation in 2017 because they failed to consider the economic feasibility of complying with the MCL. So they released new regulation for a proposed MCL in June of 2023, and it establishes an MCL of 10 parts per billion, which was the same in 2014. So none of our drinking water wells have ever exceeded the proposed MCL. Our highest detection has been 5.5. So those are our drinking water wells. Our agricultural wells, C8 and C9, they have regular Chrome 6 detections around 150% of the MCL, but these sources are blended before being treated by the Roseman Water Treatment Plant, and that ensures that the quality of water delivered to the customers is not affected. So we have continued to sample for Chrome 6 on the same schedule with the initial MCL, so reestablishment would be no additional cost to the agency. The state has been addressing public comment on the regulation. This third public comment period closes February 16th. And so as of now, there's no official date for the MCL to go into effect. And then for perchlorate, on January 1st, the detection limit for reporting was lowered from 2 parts per billion to 1 part per billion. And this is just a detection limit. So our bench ranch wells, they occasionally see results between 1 and 2 parts per billion. So this lowered DLR would require us to start sampling quarterly. And that would be an additional $450 per year for increased monitoring. And then moving on, these are forever chemicals, PFAS. So the EPA is proposing a national primary drinking water regulation to establish legally enforceable MCLs for 6 PFAS. So there's thousands of them, but these are commonly detected ones. So an MCL for these 6, along with health-based, non-enforceable maximum contaminant level goals. The EPA requested public comment on the proposed standards, which closed May 30th, 2023. And so the first 2 compounds, they're trying to set the MCL at 4 parts per trillion. And so an example of this, what it compares to, would be 1 second in 31,000 years. And it can be detected in certain things like clothing, beauty products, stuff like that. So for the 4, below those first 2 compounds, there's not really a certain number for those. They combine together to form a hazard index, and that has to be an index of less than 1. So occurrence of PFAS, we performed testing at each of Avek's drinking water wells, Bench Ranch, Eastside Water Bank, and Westside Water Bank. So results were non-detect for all those locations. And then another emerging contaminant that you might have heard of is microplastics. Microplastics in drinking water are defined as solid polymeric material to which chemical additives or other substances may have been added, which are particles which have at least 3 dimensions that are greater than 1 nanometer and less than 5,000 micrometers. So they are very small. Sources of microplastics are synthetic textiles. When you wash your clothes, it can get into the wastewater. Vehicle tires, city dust such as artificial turf, building paints, etc., road markings, and personal care products. Personal care products, those are like microbeads. And then potential health effects to humans could be gastrointestinal problems, endocrine disruption, respiratory problems, skin irritation, and cardiovascular problems. So Avek was selected by DDW as one of 30 water systems to participate in phase 1 of a statewide microplastic monitoring plan. We asked initially to be exempt from the monitoring due to our status as a wholesaler, but our request was denied. So we submitted Eastside Water Treatment Plant influent as our source water monitoring location. The DDW approved this location in November 2023. They had initially scheduled phase 1 for fall of 2023 to go through fall of 2025. They currently have no start date for this monitoring program. There are methods still being developed for microplastic monitoring, and their laboratories are working to receive certification for it. And that concludes my presentations. If you guys have any questions.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the board or staff?
No, but I'm impressed. I didn't understand some of it, but so God bless you.
Thank you. All right, I'll turn it back over.
Thank you much.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable the difference, the report you gave now than what it would have been a few decades ago.
Yeah.
It's become so much more detailed.
Yeah, every day there's something new.
Oh my
I
heavens.
can think about a question. In your experience, I would imagine that you talk to other laboratories and whatnot. Where would you see like the makeup that would be in the water or some of these other things? Is it runoff from rain?
Could be wastewater, discharge from treatment plants. That's primarily like if you're like beauty products or pharmaceuticals, things like that. Runoff from rain would be the tire dust. Like, you have to get your tires replaced because it wears off. Well, that runs off into the tributaries and stuff and gets into the drinking water. Sewage treatment plants.
Thank you much. Get home.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Gordon. So bottom line, we're in really good shape.
We are.
From a water quality
Avek has
standpoint.
so far.
So
we'll
far,
have to come
we're
out
good.
with something new that we've never heard of, but we're doing really well.
And there'll be a test in 2 weeks.
I'll be asking.
All right, so we can go back to item 8C1.
Yeah, Water Projects Committee. Audrey, we'll turn that over to you.
And I'll turn it right over to Matt or Dustin.
Yeah, let's go with Justin.
Okay, all right. Sounds good. Good evening again. So agenda item 8C1, this is consideration and possible action on award of contract for the development of a site plan design for the proposed maintenance shop building. So our maintenance department has maximized the use of their existing space, and that's limiting their opportunities to expand their resources and capabilities. So recognizing that, the board included in the fiscal year 23-24 budget, as well as the rate study, funds to design and construct a pre-engineered metal building or shop building for maintenance department staff and equipment. We haven't landed yet on the final details of the layout of that facility, but we're anticipating a footprint of about 100 by 200 feet, inclusive of maintenance bays, a semi-clean work area for electricians working on sensitive equipment, indoor equipment, and vehicle storage, welding areas, small tool storage, etc., and some workstations for maintenance personnel, computers. The Water Projects Committee has met several times on this item. They also attended an informational tour of the Quartz Hill Water District's maintenance shop building to help envision what an AVAC facility might look like, and also to talk to the Quartz Hill Water District staff about what their experience was in constructing their shop and what lessons they might have learned. So their shop is pretty recent. I think that was built back maybe 2016, I want to say. Does that sound right? So I've got some photos from that tour because I know everybody didn't get a chance to go. But this is what Quartz Hill Water District's maintenance facility looks like. You can see large roll-up doors. Their building is about the same 100 by 200 foot footprint. They told us they built out for the future. They don't need that much space at the moment, but they understand that it's more cost effective to build out today than it will be to expand their shop in the future and just grow into the space that they have as they move towards the future. This is the inside of that building. You can see Plenty of space, obviously, for vehicles with the large roll-up doors. It's very easy to get in and out. They've got storage racks over here for some of their valves and other supplies. You can see kind of behind this truck here some pipe storage that they have. Back behind this door, I don't think I've got a photo of back there, but they've got like a lift for working on vehicles for maintenance purposes and different things back there. They're able to pull. They've got a pull-through door so they can bring in a large vehicle in one way and just continue driving out without having to back it out. Yeah, they're very, very happy with their final product. Inside of that building also, there's some smaller rooms that they've built in there. On the left-hand side here, it's just kind of some small tool storage. You can see some hand tools mounted on the walls. They've got some shelves in there for other small equipment and tools. And then on the right-hand side, this is kind of their machine and welding shop area. You can see a little sniffer hood back here so the welder can put that on and exhaust the fumes from when he's welding. But plenty of space for them to make sure that they can store all their equipment and plenty of space to work on their equipment. Here at Quartz Hill, we've got somewhat of a maintenance shop. As I mentioned, the maintenance facility has kind of outgrown what they have today. If in the daylight, you can kind of look out towards the plant and you'll see this yellow tin building parked down below. This is what they're currently utilizing as their maintenance shop. Obviously a very much smaller footprint there. You can see we've got some racks for pipes and different material outside. We've got our trailer here parked outside of that building. There's just no space on the inside. So kind of zooming in, sort of trying to walk you up to the building and then going inside. We've got a couple shots. You can see that you try to keep their backhoe in there and out of the way, but when that's in there, there's not a whole lot of space for them to operate unless they pull that out every day. We've got a photo here, one of our guys grinding on something there on the floor. Here's their kind of workbench area and storage. You can see it's just very, very cluttered in there. They've got a lot of stuff. They just don't have a lot of space to really store all that stuff. This is the back area. It's kind of a funny photo, but it's one looking to the left with the backhoe in the way and one looking to the right with the backhoe in the way. They've got some shelving and storage of some valves and spools and things in there as well. So that's what they're currently working with. I think it was very helpful for the Water Projects Committee to take that tour of the two facilities. So just trying to bring you all there with them in photos. So one thing that the Water Projects Committee recommended, instead of just jumping straight into a full-blown design contract with an engineer, is that we take kind of a stepwise approach and first identify what the most appropriate location for this facility might be. And then once we have that facility or location selected, then move forward into the civil design work. So that would just be the grading, for drainage and the building footprint pad, basically. We know there are pre-manufactured building folks that will do a lot of the engineering for you when you purchase their building. And so by just doing the civil work early, we might be able to take advantage of some cost savings on the engineering by having the building manufacturer do that design and engineering for us. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do in taking kind of a stepwise approach here. So staff took that feedback from the Water Projects Committee and went out with an RFP to solicit proposals for engineering to design services to first analyze the footprint here around the existing Quartz Hill water treatment plant and look at up to 4 potential building locations that would be suitable. So they would look at locations and proximity to wet and dry utilities, what grading might be required, what drainage might be required, all of that kind of thing that would feed into the design and cost of placing a building in that particular location. They would take all of that, work up a cost, some cost factors, and provide a recommendation to staff and ultimately the Water Projects Committee and board on the location of the treatment facility. Once that's been selected, they would move forward into survey and geotechnical work for the selected site, and then begin working on the civil site design drawings for for the building pad, grading, and utilities. And that would include kind of a very high-level conceptual layout of the facility so that they could do some of that utility design. That would be what's included in the contract that we're considering for award tonight. Future steps probably be helpful to think through what those might look like. Once the civil work has been done, we would anticipate going out to bid for a contractor to begin working on the civil work, the grading, et cetera. And at that same time, kind of concurrently with that, begin working with either an engineer or building manufacturer to start the process of the actual detailed building design at that point in time. We're not there yet. We're not seeking authorization for that portion of that work, but just so that the board has some vision of what staff is thinking for the future of this project. So for tonight, we're just talking about the siting and the civil design work for now. And both of those items would be brought back to the committee and board once they've kind of progressed on that work.
Okay, is there any questions of Justin?
If you'd like, I can summarize the proposals that we've received briefly here. Okay, so I've got a table here. So we got 4 proposals. 3 of them were very competitive. One was kind of out of the ballpark. Maybe they were too busy. Maybe they weren't interested. I'm not sure. But the top 3 proposals shown in this table, the span is just under 85 to just over 91,000. So very close with each of those 3 firms that proposed on the project. Bottom line is, any of these firms that propose, staff feels comfortable working with. They think, all of them have, good experience and a good understanding of the project. But with that all being equal, the Water Projects Committee as well as staff would support a recommendation to board to go ahead and choose the lowest price proposal for this work. And that happens to be Antelope Valley Engineering, AV Engineering, for $84,750. And of course, I think you are all familiar with AV Engineering from the work they did with this Operations Center expansion building. So they're definitely familiar with AVEC, familiar with the location of the site, probably one of the reasons they had the lowest cost proposal. So unless there are any questions, that would be the recommendation from the Water Projects Committee and staff.
Very thorough job, very thorough report.
Thank you.
Is there any questions, Justin? A motion would be in order.
I'll move on.
8C1.
8C1.
I'll second the motion, Mr. President.
You have a motion and a second, and that would be to select AV Engineering.
Correct.
Okay. If there's no further questions, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Yeah, thank you. Good
Thank
report.
you. Thanks, Justin.
Okay. The next item, Gary, Customer Relations, Public Information, you're chairman of that committee?
Yeah. Was Bill Rawlings coming tonight to do a presentation on that?
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
Pam Clark's going to give a
Okay.
presentation.
Yeah, Pam,
Yeah. Come on up.
Well, good evening, President Lane, members of the board. If you'll turn to page 112, you'll find a staff report for this item. And this agenda item 8D1, consideration and possible action on sponsorship of the Antelope Valley Rural Museum at the platinum level in honor of AVEC's agricultural history. Okay, so a little background on this item. The Antelope Valley Rural Museum's mission is to honor the history of the Antelope Valley with documentation, preservation, exhibition, and education. They are a nonprofit public benefit association whose purpose is to maintain a permanent historical museum located at the AV Fairgrounds. So some of the exhibits of interest are a research library, a timeline of historical events, agricultural and historical artifacts from the Antelope Valley. So you might remember back in February of 2022, Antelope Valley State Water Contractors approved moving $10,000 in funds that had been set aside for the Smart Water Expo. If you'll remember, that was canceled due to COVID. And this was used to support landscaping and a water-related exhibit for the museum. And then the museum completed phase 1 of construction of a 12,000 square foot building that opened to the public back in February of 2023. They're now looking to move forward with phase 2 of construction, which is going to add another 9,000 square feet of space to the building. And they're seeking sponsorship from the community to help complete this next phase of construction. Okay, so just as a reminder, supporting the Rural Museum aligns to the key objectives in AVIC's 2020 Strategic Communications Plan, and that's to develop sponsorships focused on community outreach and education. The museum offers a variety of sponsorship options ranging from $100 all the way up to over $100,000, as you can see on the chart on the right. To honor AVEC's agricultural history and legacy, the committee is recommending a sponsorship of $25,000, which would put the agency at the platinum level, but there would be some provisions in the sponsorship that it's only to be used to fund building construction. As a platinum sponsor, AVEC would receive name recognition with a wood plaque on the Rural Museum's large donor wall. There'd also be an optional 4.5-foot space that could be provided for AVEC to display historical water-related items. And going back to the recommendation would be to approve a sponsorship in the amount of $25,000 for the Antelope Valley Rural Museum for phase 2 construction of their facilities located at the Antelope Valley Fairgrounds. And as I mentioned, Bill Rawlings is on the phone. Should you have any questions?
Good report, Pam.
Welcome, Bill.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Pam has pretty well went over a good presentation, and I guess just a reminder, ABAC was first established. The main customers for many years it was for agriculture.
Yeah, gosh, I appreciate Pam's work. She did a great job here.
Just take a minute, just talk about the expansion you're wanting to build the Rural Museum.
Okay. What would you like to know?
Oh, yes. You want to build a 9,000 square foot expansion? That's what it's
yeah,
working
it's just
right now.
on the south end. It'll just be a continuation of the building. Wouldn't require any plumbing or restrooms or anything like that. It would just need basically a shell with, of course, we would continue with air conditioning and the fire sprinklers. Those would be two of the major costs. Other than that, like I said, it would mostly be just a shell. And we have a little issue with some of our larger trucks and machinery that's been restored, and we need to get it indoors. And then we also have some other items that have been pledged that need to be indoors as well. So that would be the primary function of the expansion.
Thank you, and you've done a tremendous job with the Rural Museum. So, I know all the work or at least I know a lot of the work the committee has done, and you've done a tremendous amount of work for them. So I think, is there any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of Board Order 8D1, approving a platinum level sponsorship for the museum.
Van Dam, second.
And we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Harris,
Yeah.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Yeah, thank you, Pam, for the presentation.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Bill, for being on. Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. You're doing a great job on the museum.
Thanks a lot, and then we'll work with you on what kind of display or what we're going to do in the museum for you folks.
Okay, Pam,
Thank you.
you can't get out of that.
Thank you. No, I'm going to stay up here for a little while longer. We got a couple more items to get through.
All right, we're ready to move on to item 8D2. Go ahead, Pam.
All right, item 8D2, that's consideration and possible action on naming the Avek Water Science Scholarship Endowment after late Avek Director Justin G. Lane. There is a staff report for this item you'll find on page 118. So just to refresh your memory, back in February of 2020, the Avek board approved a contribution of $25,000 to the Antelope Valley College Foundation Scholarship Endowment. And that endowment enables Avek to award scholarships to AVC students on an annual basis in perpetuity. Currently, Avek has $4,200 available to award for scholarships for the 2024-2025 academic year. And Avek committed to awarding a total of $3,000 in scholarships for this academic year, divided into 3 separate $1,000 scholarships, and also expanded the eligibility criteria this year to include students taking engineering courses. I did speak today to the foundation coordinator and found out we do have 18 eligible students for scholarships, so that's great news. The remaining $1,200 would be left to grow in the endowment fund, and then the scholarships would be coming from the endowment. So this will have no impact on the current budget. Some of you might remember when the endowment was established, past Avek Director Justin Lane was chair of the Public Information Committee. He was a driving force behind this initiative, recognizing the needs of the college and local students, and really seeing the long-term opportunity for Avek to help strengthen the local workforce. Therefore, the committee is recommending the endowment and all future annual scholarship awards be renamed to honor his memory, dedication, and commitment to supporting educational and career path opportunities for students in the Antelope Valley for generations to come. We would just need to provide a new name to the foundation by February 29th to make this active this year. And then scholarship awards will be announced the week of March 18th to the 22nd.
Thank you, Pam. Is there any further discussion from the board or questions?
No, I move on board. This is Frank, Director Dodd. I move on board Order 8D2 that we name the fund under Justin G. Lane.
This is Director Mercy, second.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
And I'll abstain. Okay, motion carried. Okay, let's move on to next item, AD3.
All right,
Before we begin, I just want to check, because I work for AV Edge, I think I should probably, even though it's just a discussion, really, just for caution, I'm going to abstain and recuse myself.
Drew, you can stay here.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question real quick before we go on to the next one? The money that we put in for the scholarship fund, that's used for water-related people, correct?
Up until this year, it has been, but what we noticed is we're getting very little participation. We did as much as we could to reach out to some of the teachers in those classes. We would only have maybe a few students apply, and their grades might not have been qualifying. So this year we brought to the board a couple months ago. It was approved that we expand the scholarship opportunity for engineering students, but it still is water related students and engineering students.
Okay, well, that's fine. I just want to make sure it wasn't for nothing against it. The baseball fund or the football fund. I was just
Absolutely. No, that's a good question. Yeah, it's very limited, just water students and engineering students.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
This is an open session, so
You may abstain and you should abstain, but there's no need for you to accuse yourself.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, well, moving on then to item 8D3, that's consideration and possible action on the AV Edge 2024 Economic Roundtable Report Request for Information. Okay, as probably most of you are aware, AVEC's a member of AV Edge. That's the Antelope Valley's Economic Development and Growth Enterprise. AV Edge is devoted to facilitating business growth and opportunity for the Antelope Valley region. And every year they publish annually their Economic Roundtable Report with data and information that's specific to the region. AVEC received a request for information for the water section of the 2024 Economic Roundtable Report. And this is an opportunity for AVEC to provide an update on highlights and milestones for the agency. It is due tomorrow, so it's something, if approved, we'll get right over to AV Edge. And the report would be printed and distributed with the roundtable at the AV Edge 2024 Spring Business Summit, and that's on April 5th of this year. And then staff has prepared an RFI for your review and approval. That is on page 121 of your packet. And just to kind of give you a little background on the RFI, it highlights AVEC's investments in water banking, storage, and infrastructure, and also how these investments enable the agency to take full advantage of the 100% state water project allocation in 2023. Some of the key milestones we hit on are AVEC meeting all customer demands, the delivery of over 67,000 acre feet of imported water to existing water banks, having over 100,000 acre feet of water stored for future dry years, and then completion of the first phase of construction for the High Desert Water Bank project. And if there's no questions, the recommendation is to approve the attached request for information for the AV Edge 2024 Economic Roundtable Report.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. Is there any further questions or comments from the board?
I have a question, and Drew might have to answer this. How is this information taken over at AV Edge to look at, and how is it displayed within the booklet?
Okay, answer from here? Okay. So we compile that, we get it to our graphic designer. We have a section just on water, so different sections, utilities, infrastructure, real estate. Our graphic designer takes that and any photos submitted, makes it look nice and puts it in our water section. And the purpose being as it is shared with potential investors, to show accurately that we have water reliability.
Okay, yeah, I've seen your costs magazine. It's a very effective tool in showing investors the potential for the Antelope Valley. Are we submitting pictures if we do?
We can. We have in the past. It was going to pull a couple of pictures from our project.
Water bank, maybe?
Yeah, I think we were thinking an aerial view of the water banking, maybe the High Desert Water Bank.
I did notice in the report there's a beer and wine section that comes before water. That was kind of interesting.
Okay, motion would be in order.
I'll move on.
Director Miller?
Second.
Second by Director Van Dam. There's no further questions. Madam Secretary, we get a roll call.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Abstain?
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Yeah. Very good idea. I'm glad we're doing it.
Yeah. Thanks, Pam. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the Customer Relations Public Information Committee. Matt, that brings us down to your report.
All right. So we'll keep this short, but the first slide, I'm going to turn it over to Peter Thompson, our assistant GM, to give an update on what's going to be on the agenda for the state water contractors meeting later this week. So take it away, Pete.
Thank you, Matt. So actually the bulk of this is about what's happening water-wise.
And one of the reasons I'll be here this week is there's not a lot happening at the State Water Contractor Board this month. So I'll start off with DWR provided their first ever mid-month water operations check-in. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but I do want to come back to the board later and explain why it could make a big difference for Avek in the future and other state water project contractors. Typically, DWR just gives a once a month allocation, and that's the only peek into the box we get for how things are going water-wise. This mid-month check changes a lot of that and will help us out moving forward. Out of that mid-month check, we did see that Oroville and San Luis are doing better than projected, so that's good. We still remain below average for precipitation and snowpack, even though after those last storms. But the good news is we have an opportunity to get back to average over the next 10 days. Looks like there's a series of 3 storms that should bring some good precipitation and snowpack to the watersheds that really make a difference for us. Our next allocation, we anticipate towards the end of February, DWR will come out with some sort of announcement in terms of the allocation. Wouldn't be overly optimistic, but hopefully we get a small bump from them. The next State Water Contractor Board meeting is going to be held this Thursday. Matt and I decided that this would be a good opportunity for me to attend remotely, as there's no board action items. They'll just be going through their typical reports from DWR and State Water Contractor staff, as well as looking at priorities for the upcoming fiscal year and how those might feed into the upcoming budget for State Water Contractors. So I'll be reporting on that meeting to the State Water Contractor Committee and the board at upcoming meetings. And happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Only thing else I have to add is, what we got here? Oh, we got to go through Jordan's. We could relive the water quality presentation if you want. Or we could take the test now. Okay. So I have some upcoming events to highlight here. But before I get into that, we do have a long-term employee that put in their retirement notice. Steve Horn, been with us about 16 years. He's a water treatment plant operator at the Eastside Water Treatment Plant, and he's been out there since day one, correct? So he's spent 16 years operating the Eastside Water Treatment Plant. So
right.
Friday of this week is his last day, and we wish him well and happy retirement. So
definitely.
He's been a really good employee. So upcoming events, as you know, we're in the middle or towards the tail end of our George Lane Water Treatment Plant shutdown and annual maintenance. We do have a tour or a peek inside some of the tight areas or typically wet areas of the treatment plant tomorrow. One offering at 10 a.m. and another at 1 p.m. I know we have 3 directors confirmed for those tours. So that'll be fun. We have an agency holiday, President's Day. I don't think that's Thursday. I think that's Monday, the 19th. The Water Master Advisory Committee is on Wednesday, the 21st, a week from tomorrow, and that's actually at 9 a.m. versus 10 a.m. The CSDA North LA County chapter meeting is going to be held in Santa Clarita. I know a few directors are confirmed for that. That's also on Wednesday, the 21st at 11:30 a.m. We have one director going to the Aqua DC conference in Washington. And we have the AV Water Master Board meeting on the 28th at 10 a.m. So those are some upcoming meetings, and let us know if you haven't registered for any of those events. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep, thank you.
Is there any questions for our general manager? If not, we'll move on to item number 10, director's reports. Anybody wants to? Okay, move on to number 11, attorney report. Okay. Request for any future agenda items? Okay, we do have a need to go into closed session.
We do for item A and B.
Okay, so motion to go into closed session would be in order.
Well, I'll move and just note that I am recused on item A. So I'll move we go into closed session.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Mercy. A second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Harris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Let's take a 5-minute break and we'll meet in the conference room.
Thank you. Please stand by.